With talk of a new Supermax prison coming to the United Kingdom, today we look at 34 of the most dangerous inmates in the UK prison system that could populate such a facility if it is ever built. What are your thoughts on a new potential Supermax prison for the United Kingdom? Drop a comment down below and let me know. If you enjoy these longer form videos, then please remember to smash the like button to help this video rise in the YouTube algorithm. We have many more videos just like this one scheduled for the rest of the year. Number 34. Baz Hockton. Having a documented history of violent offences and radicalisation, Hockton was initially incarcerated for multiple assaults, including a 2016 knife attack in Ramsgate. Hockton converted to Islam while in prison and was later radicalised at HMP Whitemoor, a high-security facility in Cambridgeshire, England. On January 9, 2020, he and fellow inmate Bruce Tom Ziamani carried out a premeditated terrorist attack on prison officer Neil Trundle, using improvised weapons and wearing fake suicide belts. Hockton received a minimum term of 23 years. Number 33. Bruce Tom Ziamani. Posing a significant threat due to his persistent extremist ideology and violent actions, Bruce Tom Ziamani was sentenced to 19 years for plotting to behead a British soldier inspired by the murder of Fusilier Lee Rigby. While serving his sentence at HMP Whitemoor, Ziamani, alongside fellow inmate Baz Hockton, attempted to murder prison officer Neil Trundle in January 2020. The pair, armed with improvised bladed weapons and wearing fake suicide belts, lured Trundle to a cupboard before attacking him, shouting Allah Akbar. 2 other staff members were injured while intervening. Both attackers were convicted of attempted murder and received life sentences, with Ziamani ordered to serve a minimum of 21 years. Number 32. Kieran Blair. Sentenced to 14 years in prison in 2016 for his role in a Merseyside and Cheshire-based organised crime gang, Blair admitted to conspiracy to possess firearms with intent to endanger life and to supplying heroin, cocaine and cannabis. While incarcerated, he assaulted a fellow inmate using a makeshift weapon embedded with razors, resulting in an additional 2-year sentence. Blair's continued violent behaviour underscores the persistent threat he poses both inside and outside prison, and could be considered for a move to a Supermax-style facility. Number 31. Gemma Mitchell. Convicted of the 2021 murder and decapitation of her friend, Mitchell was motivated by financial gain, where she was going to cash in a £200,000 offer she had made for home renovations. She transported her former friend's body in a suitcase from London to Devon, where it was later discovered. In October 2022, Mitchell was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 34 years, with her being described as extremely devious and noted as having a lack of remorse. Number 30. Gabrielle Boudache. Sentenced to 12 years in prison, followed by 3 years on licence for a series of terrorism offences. An investigation led by Counter-Terrorism Policing South East revealed Boudache's extensive online activity promoting extreme right-wing ideologies. He was found guilty of 4 counts of encouraging terrorism, 1 count of disseminating a terrorist publication, and 1 count of sending electronic communications with intent to cause distress. Additionally, he pleaded guilty to 6 counts of possessing information useful for committing or preparing acts of terrorism. Materials seized from his residence included Nazi memorabilia, a 3D printed firearm, and instructional videos on bomb making. Boudache's actions, including emulating the Christchurch mosque attacker and the persistent threat of radicalisation and extremist propaganda he has been exposed to, make him a prime candidate for Supermax confinement. Number 29. Benjamin Jean. Convicted in 2006 for the murders of 2 patients and causing grievous bodily harm to 15 others, Benjamin Jean was a former nurse at Horton General Hospital. Between December 2003 and February 2004, multiple patients under his care suffered unexpected respiratory arrests. Investigations revealed that Jean had administered unauthorised sedatives and muscle relaxants, including midazolam and vecuronium, to induce these emergencies, allegedly for the thrill of resuscitation. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years. Number 28, Peter Chapman. Infamously dubbed the Facebook Killer, Chapman is serving a life sentence with a minimum term of 35 years at HM Prison Frankland for the 2009 kidnap and murder of 17-year-old Ashley Hall. Chapman lured Hall by posing as a teenage boy on Facebook, exploiting social media to facilitate his crime. In April 2012, while incarcerated, Chapman was attacked by a fellow inmate, sustaining facial injuries that required medical treatment within the prison. Number 27, Levi Belfield. Considered to be one of the most dangerous prisoners inside Frankland Prison, Belfield is a notorious British serial killer serving 2 whole life sentences. Belfield was the first prisoner in the UK to receive 2 whole life orders after murdering Millie Dowler, Marsha McDonnell and Amélie Delagrange. Also serving a separate sentence for the attempted murder of Kate Sheedy, Belfield's crimes were characterised by their brutal and misogynistic nature. Now known as the Bus Stop Killer, he has been subjected to threats and attacks from fellow inmates, leading to periods of solitary confinement for his own protection. Due to the high-profile nature of his crimes, he was moved to HMP Wakefield, known as Monster Mansion, in 2012 and will almost certainly move to any future Supermax facility on British territory if it is ever built. Number 26. Ian Huntley. Convicted of the 2002 Soham murders of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, he has faced multiple violent incidents during his imprisonment. Huntley was attacked by fellow inmate Damien Folkes while incarcerated at HMP Frankland and required hospital treatment with a severe neck wound. Due to his segregation needs and life in solitary confinement, a move to Supermax level of custody for Huntley seems almost certain. Number 25, Andrew Dawson. First convicted in 1982 for the stabbing death of 91-year-old shopkeeper Henry Walsh in Ormskirk, Lancashire, Dawson was released on licence but was returned to prison multiple times for breaches. In July 2010, while living in Derby, he murdered 2 neighbours, John David Matthews and Paul Hancock, both of whom he stabbed multiple times and left in their bathtubs. Dawson was arrested after a confession letter signed "Yours, the Angel of Mercy" was found. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order in 2011. Being one of Britain's most notorious serial killers and serving a whole life sentence, you can expect Dawson to be a resident of any new Supermax facility very soon. Number 24, Stephen Farrow. Diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, Farrow harboured an obsessive hatred of Christianity, which he attributed to alleged abuse by a priest during his youth. In January 2012, he murdered Betty Yates, a retired teacher, in her Worcestershire home, and 6 weeks later he killed John Suddards, a vicar, in Thornbury. Farrow was convicted in 2012 for the murders and sentenced to 2 whole life terms for these crimes. Number 23, Mark Bridger. Another inmate serving a whole life sentence for the 2012 abduction, sexual assault and murder of 5-year-old April Jones in Machynlleth, Wales. Bridger was attacked in HMP Wakefield by fellow inmate Juvenile Ferreira. The assault resulted in a deep wound requiring over 30 stitches and plastic surgery. Ferreira was subsequently sentenced to a second life term with an extended minimum sentence. Despite being housed in one of the UK's most secure prisons, Bridger may be moved to a more secure prison should it be deemed necessary. Number 22, Dale Cregan. One of the most dangerous prisoners in the United Kingdom, Cregan murdered Mark Short, a 23-year-old man at the Cotton Tree pub in Droylsden, Greater Manchester. In August of the same year, he killed Mark's father, David Short, at his home in Clayton, using both a firearm and a grenade. On September 18, 2012, Cregan lured police constables Nicola Hughes and Fiona Bone to a fake burglary scene in Mottram, Rotherham, where he ambushed and killed them with a Glock pistol and an M75 grenade. In June 2013, he was sentenced to a whole life order, ensuring he will never be released from prison, and has been a resident at both HMP Frankland and Ashworth High Security Hospital. His presence in these institutions has already been associated with heightened tensions and security concerns, and any move to Supermax is almost guaranteed for Cregan should it ever be built. Number 21, Paul O'Hara. Convicted double murderer O'Hara fatally stabbed his ex-girlfriend, Janine Waterworth, in Oldham and was jailed for life but released on licence in 2013. He entered into a relationship with Shirley Shannon, but on the 17th March 2014, she reported his abuse to police at her home in Rawtenstall. O'Hara attacked her and two officers with a hammer, then chased and stabbed her to death in the street. He admitted both murder and assaulting the officers at court. Then, in June 2014, he received a whole life sentence, with the judge deeming him extremely dangerous to women. Number 20, Michael Olumide Adebolajo. On 22nd May 2013, Adebolajo ran Lee Rigby down with a car before brutally attacking him with knives and a cleaver. He remained at the scene, proclaiming the act as retaliation for British military actions in Muslim countries. In February 2014, Adebolajo received a whole life term, and his appeals were dismissed in December 2014. He has been described as one of the most dangerous terrorists in Britain's jails today. Number 19, Joanna Dennehy. Responsible for the brutal murders of 3 men in 2013, these crimes made Dennehy one of the few women in the UK to receive a whole life prison sentence. Dennehy lived in Peterborough, Cambridgeshire, where she embarked on a shocking killing spree that began in March 2013. She murdered her housemate Lukasz Slabosewski, then killed her landlord Kevin Lee, and finally John Chapman, another housemate. Dennehy displayed extreme cruelty, often mocking the killings, and showed no remorse throughout the investigation. Dennehy was arrested on April 2013 and pleaded guilty to all charges, including 3 murders and 2 attempted murders. In February 2014, she was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life tariff, meaning she will never be released. She is currently held at HMP Bronzefield and is considered one of the most dangerous female prisoners in the UK. Number 18, Christopher Halliwell. A former taxi driver from Swindon, Christopher Halliwell is serving a whole life prison sentence for the murders of Cian O'Callaghan and Becky Godden Edwards. In March 2011, 22-year-old Cian O'Callaghan disappeared after leaving a nightclub. Halliwell was arrested and confessed to her murder, leading police to her body near Uffington, Oxfordshire. He also revealed the location of Godden Edwards' remains, a 20-year-old who had been missing since 2003. However, due to procedural errors, specifically the failure to caution Halliwell and provide legal representation, his confession regarding Godden Edwards was initially deemed inadmissible. Despite this setback, further evidence led to his conviction for her murder in 2016. Halliwell had previously been sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years for O'Callaghan's murder in 2012. Following his second conviction, he received a whole life order, ensuring he will never be released, and investigations suggest Halliwell may be linked to other unsolved cases. Number 17, Mark Fellows. Nicknamed the Iceman, Fellows is a British contract killer serving a whole life prison sentence for the murders of 2 prominent gangland figures, Paul Massey and John Kinsella. Both victims were associated with the A-Team gang in Salford, while Fellows was linked to a rival faction led by Michael Carroll. The killings were part of a violent feud between these criminal groups. Fellows' conviction was aided by GPS data from his Garmin fitness watch, which placed him near Massey's home during reconnaissance. In January 2019, following an 8-week trial at Liverpool Crown Court, Fellows was convicted of both murders and sentenced to a whole life term, ensuring he will never be released. Number 16, Wayne Couzens. Another convict who could be sent to a future Supermax facility is former police officer Wayne Couzens. A former Metropolitan Police officer, Couzens is serving a whole-life prison sentence for the abduction, rape and murder of Sarah Everard in March 2021. While off duty, Couzens used his police credentials to falsely arrest the 33-year-old marketing executive under the pretense of breaching COVID-19 regulations. The case sparked national outrage and led to increased scrutiny of police vetting procedures, and on the 30th September 2021, he was sentenced to a whole-life order, meaning he will never be released. Number 15. Lucy Letby. Currently the only prisoner in the UK with more than 5 whole-life sentences, Letby is a former neonatal nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital, convicted in August 2023 of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others between June 2015 and June 2016. She received her 15th whole-life sentence in 2023-2024. Letby is incarcerated at HMP Bronzefield, one of the UK's highest security women's prisons, and remains one of only 4 women in UK history to receive a whole-life order. While not considered violent in the prison system, she currently holds the record for having the most whole-life orders in the whole UK. Number 14. Kyle Clifford. Convicted of the premeditated murders of his ex-girlfriend Louise Hunt, her sister Hannah Hunt, and their mother Carol Hunt on the 9th of July 2024 in Bushey, Clifford is a 26-year-old former soldier from Enfield. Clifford meticulously planned the attack, purchasing weapons and supplies, and researching the family's schedule to ensure their father, BBC racing commentator John Hunt, would be absent. In March 2025, Clifford was sentenced in absentia to 3 whole-life orders for the murders and additional concurrent sentences for rape, false imprisonment, and weapon possession. The judge described him as a jealous man soaked in self-pity who held women in utter contempt. Clifford is currently incarcerated on a whole-life term and will never be released. Number 13. Peter Howard Moore, known as the Man in Black. This Welsh serial killer convicted of murdering 4 men in North Wales between September and December 1995. At the time, Moore managed cinemas in Bagilt, Holyhead, Kinmel Bay and Denbigh. He lured his victims, Henry Roberts, Edward Carthy, Keith Randalls and Anthony Davies, under various pretenses before murdering them. During his 1996 trial, Moore attempted to deflect blame by claiming the killings were carried out by a fictitious lover named Jason, inspired by the Friday the 13th films. The jury rejected this defence, and Moore was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole-life tariff, ensuring he would never be released. Currently incarcerated at HMP Wakefield, he would be a prime candidate for any future cell at a new Supermax prison in the United Kingdom. Number 12. Malcolm Green. Dubbed the Body in the Bags Killer, Green is one of Wales's most notorious double murderers, and his early life, Green's life, was marred by early trauma. In 1971, at the age of just 24, Green murdered 41-year-old Glenys Johnson from Grangetown and made several anonymous calls to the police, taunting them about the murder. After his conviction, he received a life sentence with a minimum term of 25 years, but was released after serving 18 years. Less than a year after his release in 1990, Green befriended Clive Tully, a 24-year-old New Zealander whom he later attacked. This led to his second arrest and a second life sentence with a whole life tariff, ensuring he would never be released. Number 11. Mark Robinson. Another inmate serving a whole life sentence for 2 brutal killings committed nearly 2 decades apart, Robinson first murdered a 16-year-old girl in Stockton-on-Tees in 1977. He was convicted and served 10 years in prison. Yet, after his release in March 1989, he began a relationship with 25-year-old Sharon Morley. On 19 September 1989, just 7 months after his release, Robinson discovered a photograph of Morley's former boyfriend. In the ensuing argument, he attacked Morley, fatally injuring her, was convicted of her murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Robinson's case is notable for the failure of the parole system to to prevent a known violent offender from reoffending, and he will never be released from prison. Number 10. Anthony Arkwright. Born in 1968 in Wath-upon-Dearne, South Yorkshire, Arkwright is a British spree killer who committed a series of brutal murders over a 56-hour period in August 1988. At the age of 21, he murdered his 68-year-old grandfather, Stasis Poedokis, at his allotment, and then killed his neighbour, Raymond Ford. His third victim was another neighbour, Marcus Law, a disabled man whom Arkwright targeted at random. Arkwright is also suspected of murdering his grandfather's housekeeper, Elsa Cronadate, though this charge was left on file. Due to both the number and severity of the murders, Arkwright appears in the top 10 most likely people to be moved to any new British Supermax prison. He is one of the youngest individuals in the United Kingdom to be handed a whole life sentence. Number 9. John Francis Duffy. Duffy, born in 1958, terrorised women in southern England during the 1980s and earned the nickname Railway Rapist, along with his accomplice David Mulcahy. He targeted women near railway stations, committing a series of brutal attacks and murders with known victims include 19-year-old Alison Day, 15-year-old Marcia Tamboza, and 29-year-old Anne Locke. Duffy was arrested in November 1986 after being caught stalking a woman, and in 1988 he was convicted of 2 murders and 4 rapes, receiving a life sentence with a minimum term of 30 years. His crimes prompted one of the UK's largest manhunts since the Yorkshire Ripper case, and Duffy remains incarcerated at HMP Frankland. Number 8. Jeremy Neville Bamber. Bamber was convicted in 1986 for the murders of his adoptive parents, Neville and June Bamber, his sister Sheila Caffel, and her 6-year-old twin sons, Daniel and Nicholas, at White House Farm in Essex on July 21, 1985. Initially, police believed Sheila, who had schizophrenia, had committed a murder-suicide. However, Bamber's ex-girlfriend Julie Mugford later told police he had confessed to the killings. Bamber was convicted by a 10-2 jury verdict and sentenced to life imprisonment, later upgraded to a whole life tariff, ensuring he would never be released. Over the years, his legal team has submitted multiple appeals, citing alleged police misconduct, mishandled evidence, and new forensic analyses. In 2024, a New Yorker investigation highlighted potential police failings, including altered crime scene evidence and undisclosed materials. As of 2025, the Criminal Cases Review Commission is reviewing his case, with supporters arguing it may represent a significant miscarriage of justice. However, any new Supermax cells may one day house Bamber due to the nature of the crimes he is convicted of. Number 7. Arthur Hutchinson. On the 23rd October 1983, while on the run from police, Hutchinson broke into the Leitner family home in Dore, Sheffield, shortly after the wedding of their daughter Suzanne. Inside, he fatally stabbed solicitor Basil Leitner, his wife Avril, and their son Richard, then attacked their 18-year-old daughter Nicola at knife point before fleeing the scene. Hutchinson was apprehended on 5 November 1983 after a nationwide manhunt, and his conviction was secured through forensic evidence, including a palm print on a champagne glass and a bite mark on a piece of cheese. In September 1984, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommended minimum term of 18 years. However, then Home Secretary Leon Britton later imposed a whole life tariff, ensuring Hutchinson would never be released. Hutchinson has repeatedly challenged his sentence, arguing that a whole life tariff breaches his human rights. Yet, his appeals have been rejected by the High Court and the European Court of Human Rights. Number 6. John Childs. Also known as Bruce Childs, this British contract killer and serial murderer was convicted in 1979 for 6 brutal killings committed between 1974 and 1978 in East London. Operating under the guise of a hitman, Childs targeted individuals in apparent contract killings, though none of the victims' bodies were ever recovered. His methods were exceptionally violent, and victims included George Brett and his 10-year-old son Terry, both both shot dead in 1975, and Terry Eve, who was killed in 1974. Childs remains incarcerated under a whole-life tariff, ensuring he will never be released and could easily be considered for a high-security cell at any new Supermax prison. Number 5, James Porky O'Rourke. Moving into the top 5 now, and these prisoners are almost certain to populate any new British Supermax prison, with James Porky O'Rourke no exception. Born in 1970 in East Glasgow, O'Rourke is one of Scotland's most notorious and violent prisoners, who was first convicted in 1992 for the murder of Neil Kearney during a gang feud. Sentenced to life imprisonment, O'Rourke's violent behaviour continued behind bars, and in 1997 he and another inmate held a prison officer and a nurse hostage for several hours at HMP Glenorchiel, resulting in an additional 6-year sentence. He received further sentences for various assaults: 8 years in 2002 for abduction and assault, 4 years in 2004 for another attack, and 8 years in 2005 for stabbing a prison escort and a senior jail official at HMP Kilmarnock. In 2019, he attempted to murder fellow inmate Thomas Peacock, leading to another 9-year sentence. Then in January 2021, O'Rourke murdered inmate Dean Ramsey. In July 2022, he was sentenced to a second life term with a minimum of 23 years, and the judge described him as having by far the worst criminal record he had ever encountered. O'Rourke would almost certainly spend the rest of his life inside any Supermax. Number 4, Gary Vinter. British double murderer. Vinter is already serving a whole life sentence for a series of violent crimes that occurred in August 1995 when he attacked his colleague Carl Eden at a railway depot. He received a life sentence in 1996 with a minimum term of 10 years and was released on licence in 2005. Just weeks after being released again following a brief re-incarceration for a pub brawl in 2008, Vinter murdered his estranged wife Anne White and later confessed to the killing, showing no remorse during his trial. This second murder led to a whole life tariff, yet continued his violent behaviour behind bars, attacking fellow inmate Roy Whiting. Then in November 2014, he brutally assaulted another inmate, Lee Newell, at HMP Woodhill with this attack, resulting in a third life sentence in 2016. Number 3, Robert Maudsley. Currently considered to be Britain's most dangerous inmate, Robert Maudsley was recently transferred to another prison from HMP Wakefield, where he had been kept in a specialist plexiglass cell for most of his life. Responsible for 4 murders between 1974 and 1978, Maudsley's first killing occurred in 1974 when he murdered John Farrell. In 1977, alongside another inmate, he killed fellow patient David Francis at Broadmoor Secure Hospital. In 1978, Maudsley killed again, with 2 inmates in one day both being attacked, and Maudsley calmly informing the guards on duty that they'll be too short on the roll call. Convicted of these murders, he then received a whole life sentence, and due to his violent behaviour towards prisoners and guards, Maudsley has spent over 4 decades in solitary confinement. Earning the nickname Hannibal the Cannibal, Maudsley would automatically face a transfer to any new Supermax facility, yet even this may require specialist cells and staff to hold a convict of his violent nature. Number 2, Hashem Abedi. While Maudsley still holds the most dangerous convict title, Abedi is fast catching him up, with multiple attacks on prison staff. Abedi was incarcerated at HMP Frankland, a high-security prison in County Durham, and is the younger brother of Salman Abedi, who carried out the 2017 Manchester Arena suicide bombing that killed 22 people. Following his extradition from Libya in 2019, Hashem was convicted in 2020 of 22 counts of murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to cause an explosion likely to endanger life. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 55 years, the longest minimum term ever imposed by a British court. In April 2025, he attacked 3 prison officers using boiling oil and makeshift blades, causing serious injuries. The incident prompted a review of prison security and led to his transfer to HMP Belmarsh, another high-security facility. The attack on staff was called a catastrophic failure of duty by prison authorities, and the Ministry of Justice later suspended kitchen access for inmates in high-risk units due to his attack. The attacks by Abidi and our next inmate have been one of the main reasons for ideas on a new Supermax facility. Number 1. Axel Rudakubana, another inmate who is considered so dangerous by staff that he can only be escorted by 7 officers at once. Rudakubana attacked a Taylor Swift-themed dance workshop in Southport. He was arrested at the scene and later charged with multiple offences, including murder, attempted murder, and possession of a bladed article. Investigations revealed that Rudakubana had a history of violent behaviour and had been referred to the UK's Prevent programme 3 times between 2019 and 2021 due to concerns about his interest in violence and extremist content. Following the attack, authorities discovered ricin and an Al-Qaeda training manual at his home, leading to additional charges under the Biological Weapons Act 1974 and the Terrorism Act 2000. In January 2025, Rudakubana pleaded guilty to all charges and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 52 years. While incarcerated at HMP Belmarsh, he attacked a prison officer by throwing boiling water, resulting in enhanced security measures, including being fed through a hatch and escorted by multiple officers. Although not on a whole-life tariff due to his age at the time of the killings, Rudakubana is never expected to be released and won't be eligible for parole at best until he is 70 years old. Rudakubana would, with almost certainty, be a prime candidate for any Supermax cell in the UK. Thanks for watching. We have many more crime videos in our content library for you to binge watch and a link to the playlist on this page. We also publish every Saturday, so hit that subscribe button with the bell icon.